my mill gave me a 6 out of 10 as a wife in a secret group chat. My husband's response made me pack my bags. I have been married to my husband Kevin for 3 years and together for 5. His mother Linda has never been warm to me, but I always assumed she was just one of those reserved women who takes time to open up. I made every effort to win her over. I cooked for family dinners. I remembered every birthday. I helped plan her anniversary party last year down to the napkin colors. She would smile politely, thank me, and then find small things to critique. The turkey was a little dry. The gift wrapping could have been neater. I brushed it off because Kevin always told me his mom was just particular and that I shouldn't take it personally. I believed him because I had no reason not to. That changed last Saturday. We were at his parents' house for his dad's retirement party. About halfway through the evening, Linda asked me to grab her phone from the kitchen counter because she wanted to show everyone photos from their cruise. I picked up her phone and the screen lit up with a notification from a group chat called Family Updates. The preview showed a message from Kevin's aunt that said, "What's her score this week?" I know I shouldn't have looked, but something in my gut told me to open it. What I found made my hands shake. There was a spreadsheet. An actual color-coded spreadsheet with my name at the top and categories down the side. Cooking, cleaning, appearance, career, attitude, motherhood potential. Each category had a score from 1 to 10, updated weekly, with comments from Linda explaining her rating. The most recent entry was from that morning. She had given me a 6 out of 10 overall because I had showed up to the party in jeans instead of a dress, brought store-bought cookies instead of homemade, and had been too loud when greeting people at the door. I scrolled up and realized this spreadsheet had been going for 3 years. 3 years of Linda rating me like some kind of product review. 3 years of Kevin's aunts and cousins commenting with laughing emojis and adding their own observations. One aunt wrote that I had gained weight since the wedding. A cousin said it was embarrassing that I made more money than Kevin. His own sister wrote that Linda should have pushed harder for Kevin to marry his ex-girlfriend Rachel, because at least she came from a good family. I felt physically sick. But the thing that broke me wasn't Linda or the aunts or the cousins. It was Kevin. He was in the group chat. He had been in it from the beginning. I scrolled through 3 years of messages, and not once did he defend me. Not once did he tell them to stop. When his mother gave me a 4 out of 10 on the week of my miscarriage because I had been moping around and neglecting Kevin's needs, he responded with a thumbs up emoji. A thumbs up. I walked back into the living room and everyone was laughing at something his dad had said. I looked at Kevin sitting there with his arms stretched across the couch like nothing was wrong. I looked at Linda waiting for her phone with that polite smile she always gave me. I handed her the phone and said I wasn't feeling well and needed to leave. Kevin barely looked up when he said okay, and told me he would catch a ride home with his brother. I drove home, packed 3 suitcases, loaded up everything important to me, and left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. He finally texted me 4 hours later asking where I moved the leftovers. He still doesn't know that I know. But he's about to find out, because I forwarded that entire spreadsheet to the one person Linda has spent her whole life trying to impress, and she checks her email first thing every Sunday morning. I sit in my hotel room Sunday morning knowing Phoebe is opening her email right now, and my hands won't stop shaking even though I'm the one who sent it. The spreadsheet with 3 years of ratings and cruel comments is sitting in her inbox and there's no taking it back. I check the clock on the nightstand every few minutes like that will somehow change what's happening. The room feels too quiet and too small at the same time. I ordered coffee from the front desk earlier, but it's gone cold on the table because I can't make myself drink it. Every time I close my eyes, I see that thumbs up emoji next to Linda's comment about my miscarriage. My phone sits face down on the bed and I keep staring at it like it might explode. Part of me wants to call Phoebe and explain everything before she reads the email, but another part knows the spreadsheet speaks for itself. I pace between the window and the bathroom, checking my reflection without really seeing it. The person looking back at me seems like a stranger, someone who actually stood up for herself instead of trying harder to please people who were scoring her like a test. My phone starts buzzing around 9 in the morning with calls from numbers I don't recognize, then Kevin's number over and over. I silence everything and order room service breakfast because I need to eat something even though my stomach is in knots. The menu takes me 10 minutes to read because I can't focus on the words. I finally pick scrambled eggs and toast, the kind of basic meal that won't make me sick if I can only manage a few bites. When the food arrives, I sign the receipt and the server asks if I'm okay. I must look terrible because he offers to bring me extra coffee without me asking. I sit on the edge of the bed with the plate balanced on my knees, forcing myself to take small bites. The eggs taste like nothing, and the toast sticks in my throat, but I keep eating because I haven't had anything since yesterday afternoon. My phone keeps lighting up with new calls, and I watch the screen fill with missed call notifications. Kevin's name appears over and over between numbers I don't recognize. Linda must be calling from other people's phones trying to get through. I turn the phone completely off and finish my breakfast in silence. By noon, I have 47 missed calls and the voicemails start getting frantic. I turn my phone back on just long enough to see the notification count and immediately regret it. Linda's voice is shrill, asking what I've done. Cecilia sounds panicked, and Kevin keeps saying we need to talk right now, like this is just another argument we can smooth over. I delete most of them without listening all the way through because hearing their voices makes my chest tight. One message from Miranda starts with an apology, but quickly shifts to asking me to fix this situation. Another from someone whose name I don't even recognize tells me I'm tearing the family apart. I save all of them anyway because some instinct tells me I might need proof of their reactions later. My hands shake so badly I almost drop the phone trying to navigate the voicemail menu. I finally listen to one message from Kevin where he sounds genuinely confused, asking why I left and where I put his good work shirts. He still doesn't know about the spreadsheet, which means the family is scrambling to do damage control before he finds out what I discovered. His voice has that annoyed tone he uses when I forget to pick up his dry cleaning or move his things. He asks if I'm mad about something and says we can talk about it when he gets home from work, like I'm being dramatic over nothing. The message ends with him asking if I remembered to pay the electric bill. I play it 3 times, listening to his complete lack of awareness. He has no idea his entire family spent 3 years rating me and he participated. He doesn't know I saw his thumbs up emoji. He thinks I left because of some minor disagreement he can't even identify. The gap between what he knows and what I know feels massive. Around 2 in the afternoon, Phoebe calls from a number I don't have saved. Her voice is calm and kind when she says she received my email and asks if I'm somewhere safe, which makes me cry for the first time since I left. I wasn't expecting her to sound worried about me instead of angry. The tears come hard and fast, making it difficult to breathe or talk. She waits patiently while I try to pull myself together, not rushing me or telling me to calm down. When I can finally speak, I tell her I'm at a hotel and I'm okay physically. She asks if I need anything and offers to come meet me if I want company. Her kindness breaks something loose inside me that I've been holding tight since Saturday night. I cry for 20 minutes while she stays on the line, occasionally saying gentle things that make me feel less alone. Phoebe tells me she's known Linda for 40 years and always suspected she had a cruel streak, but this spreadsheet is beyond anything she imagined. She says Linda has spent decades trying to impress her because Phoebe married well and has the life Linda always wanted, and this email has destroyed Linda's carefully maintained image. Her voice gets harder when she talks about Linda showing up at church events and social gatherings, always trying to one-up other women. She mentions times when Linda made cutting remarks about other people's children or marriages disguised as concern. She tells me about a woman from their book club who stopped coming after Linda, systematically criticized everything about her for months. Hearing these stories helps me understand that Linda's treatment of me wasn't personal. It was just her pattern. Phoebe says she's already forwarded my email to 3 other women in their social circle who deserve to know what Linda is really like. We talk for an hour, and Phoebe shares that Linda used to do similar things to other people, always finding ways to tear down women she felt threatened by. She tells me I deserve so much better than this family and offers to help however she can, which feels like the first genuine support I've had in years. She gives me the name of her divorce attorney and tells me not to worry about the cost, because she knows someone who owes her a favor. We discuss practical things like changing my bank accounts and securing my important documents. She asks if I have copies of everything I need, and I realize I left my birth certificate at the house. Phoebe says she'll help me get it back safely when the time comes. She tells me stories about her own divorce 30 years ago and how she rebuilt her life afterward. By the time we hang up, I feel less scared and more determined. Kevin finally figures out I'm not coming home and shows up at our house to find my wedding ring on the counter. His text changes from confused to angry, demanding to know what kind of dramatic statement I'm trying to make and insisting I'm overreacting to something. The message comes through while I'm still processing my conversation with Phoebe. He says leaving my ring is childish and manipulative. He wants to know where I am and why I'm not answering his calls. He tells me his mother is upset and I need to explain myself. The texts keep coming, each one more demanding than the last. He says I'm embarrassing him in front of his family. He accuses me of planning this whole thing to hurt him. He asks what he's supposed to tell people when they ask where his wife is. Not once does he ask if I'm okay, or what made me leave. I text back a screenshot of the spreadsheet with his thumbs up emoji on the post about my miscarriage. 3 dots appear and disappear for 20 minutes before he responds saying, "We need to discuss this in person like adults," completely missing that his response is exactly the problem. I watch the dots appear and vanish over and over, imagining him trying to figure out what to say. When his message finally comes through, it's full of deflection. He says the group chat was just his family being family, and I'm taking it too seriously. He claims he didn't really read most of the messages and the thumbs up didn't mean anything. He tells me I'm being too sensitive and I need to understand his mother's perspective. He says if I would just come home, we can work through this misunderstanding together. The word misunderstanding makes me want to throw my phone across the room. Monday morning, I call a divorce attorney Phoebe recommended, and Lawrence Fowler fits me in for an afternoon appointment. Walking into his office feels surreal because I never imagined my marriage would end like this, but I know there's no going back from what I discovered. The building is downtown in one of those old converted houses with creaky floors and too much dark wood. The receptionist offers me water and I accept even though I'm not thirsty, just to have something to do with my hands. I fill out paperwork asking questions about my marriage that seem impossible to answer in the small spaces provided. When Lawrence calls me back to his office, he's younger than I expected with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He asks me to tell him everything, and I start with Saturday night, my voice shaking as I describe finding the spreadsheet on Linda's phone. I hand him the printed copy of the spreadsheet I prepared before the meeting. He puts on reading glasses and starts going through it page by page, his jaw getting tighter with each scroll. The spreadsheet goes back 3 years with entries every single week, color-coded by category, and his finger traces down the columns while his expression gets darker. He stops at the entry from the week of my miscarriage where Linda gave me a 4 out of 10 and wrote that I was moping around and neglecting Kevin's needs, and Kevin responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Lawrence takes off his glasses and sets them on his desk, then looks at me with something between anger and sadness in his eyes. He tells me this level of documented emotional abuse is significant, especially because it continued through major life events like my miscarriage, and Kevin's active participation makes it even worse for him legally. He explains that in divorce proceedings, this kind of evidence shows a pattern of emotional cruelty that went on for years, and the fact that it's all documented with dates and Kevin's responses makes it impossible for him to deny or minimize. I feel validated hearing someone with legal expertise confirm that what happened to me was actually abuse, not just family drama like Kevin's relatives keep claiming. We spend the next hour discussing my options, and Lawrence explains everything in terms I can actually understand instead of drowning me in legal language. He says I have a strong case for keeping the house since I've been paying most of the mortgage anyway, and my name is on the deed, which helps. He pulls up records showing my bank statements prove I contributed about 70% of our housing costs over the past 3 years, while Kevin spent his money on other things. The harassment from Kevin's family through constant calls and messages also constitutes documentation of their toxic behavior, which supports my need for a clean break without ongoing contact. Lawrence makes notes while I talk about the group chat members and their relationship to Kevin, building a picture of the whole family dynamic that enabled this abuse. He asks questions about specific incidents mentioned in the spreadsheet, and I explain the context behind Linda's lowest ratings, like the week she gave me a 3 because I got a promotion that paid more than Kevin's job. By the end of our discussion, I feel like I have an actual plan instead of just running away scared. I authorize Lawrence to send Kevin a letter informing him that I've retained legal counsel, and all future communication needs to go through my attorney. Signing the authorization form feels powerful in a way I didn't expect, like I'm finally taking control after 3 years of trying to please people who were literally scoring my worth as a human being. Lawrence says he'll send the letter today via certified mail, so Kevin has to sign for it, which means he can't claim he never received it. He also advises me to block Kevin's number and only communicate through him from now on, because anything Kevin says directly to me could be used to manipulate or pressure me. I leave his office feeling stronger than I have in weeks, knowing someone is actually on my side and fighting for me instead of against me. My phone rings 2 hours later from a number I don't recognize, and I answer without thinking. Arthur's voice comes through trying to sound reasonable and concerned, saying he heard I left Kevin and he wants to understand what's going on. He uses the word apparently a lot, like apparently I'm upset about something and apparently there was some kind of family chat that bothered me. He tells me families have disagreements all the time, and this seems like something we should talk through instead of me tearing everyone apart over what was probably just a silly joke taken the wrong way. The way he phrases everything tells me the family has coordinated their response and decided to minimize what they did by calling it a joke or a misunderstanding. I ask Arthur directly if he would think it was a silly joke if his wife discovered his family had been rating her for 3 years with a color-coded spreadsheet, and he participated in it by reading and commenting. The silence on the other end stretches so long I think he might have hung up, but then he mutters something about how that's different, and I'm being dramatic about the whole situation. I tell him it's not different at all, it's exactly the same, and his response proves they all know what they did was wrong, but don't want to face consequences. He starts to argue, but I hang up and immediately block his number along with every other family member I can think of. My blocked contacts list grows to 17 people by the time I'm done. The family group chat apparently explodes after Arthur reports back that I won't listen to reason, because my email inbox starts filling up with messages from relatives I barely know, and some I've never even met. Kevin's second cousin writes a long message about how family is forever, and I need to forgive and move forward for everyone's sake. An aunt I met once at a wedding sends 3 paragraphs about how Linda is suffering, and Kevin's uncle emails to say, I'm embarrassing the whole family by making this public, and I should handle things privately, like a mature adult. Some try sympathy by saying they understand I'm hurt, but everyone makes mistakes. Others try guilt by talking about how this is affecting Kevin's parents' health and marriage. But every single one wants me to smooth this over and make it go away, so they can all go back to pretending they're a normal, functional family, instead of dealing with what they actually did. None of them seem to understand this isn't about them or their comfort. It's about 3 years of documented cruelty that my own husband participated in, while I tried desperately to earn approval I was never going to get. Phoebe calls Tuesday evening, and I answer immediately because she's one of the few people I actually want to talk to right now. She tells me Linda showed up at her house that afternoon in tears, begging her not to tell anyone else about the spreadsheet and claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Phoebe says she told Linda very clearly that she's already shared the information with several mutual friends because behavior like keeping a rating spreadsheet on your daughter-in-law doesn't deserve protection or privacy. Linda apparently fell apart at that point, crying about how her reputation is destroyed and everyone will think she's a terrible person. Phoebe told her that she is a terrible person for what she did to me, and Linda left looking completely destroyed, but still not actually apologizing or taking responsibility. Hearing about Linda's humiliation creates a complicated mix of feelings I wasn't prepared for. Part of me feels satisfied knowing she's finally experiencing consequences for her cruelty, that the woman who spent 3 years making me feel inadequate is now facing judgment herself. But another part just feels tired and sad about all the energy I wasted trying to win approval from someone who was never going to give it no matter what I did. I spent 3 years cooking perfect dinners and remembering birthdays and planning parties, and none of it mattered because Linda had already decided I wasn't good enough before I even started trying. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrives at my hotel via certified mail, and I know before opening it that Kevin has retained his own attorney. The letter is full of legal language that basically boils down to me abandoning our marriage without cause, and Kevin demanding I return home immediately to work on our relationship. His lawyer writes about marital obligations and good faith efforts at reconciliation, completely ignoring the 3 years of documented abuse that caused me to leave. I scan the letter and email it to Lawrence, who calls me back within an hour laughing. He says Kevin's attorney clearly doesn't know about the spreadsheet yet, and is operating under Kevin's version of events where I just left for no reason. Lawrence sounds almost gleeful when he explains how surprised Kevin's lawyer is going to be when he sees the actual evidence. We send back a response that same day with the full spreadsheet attached as evidence and a detailed outline of the emotional abuse I endured throughout our marriage. Lawrence includes specific examples with dates, Kevin's participation documented through his own messages, and the impact on my mental health and well-being. The response letter is professional but devastating, laying out exactly why I left and why I have no intention of returning or reconciling. Lawrence tells me Kevin's attorney will almost certainly advise him to settle quickly and quietly, rather than have this become part of public court records where anyone could access it. Because no lawyer wants their client's cruelty documented in permanent legal files that reflect badly on everyone involved. I schedule the locksmith for Thursday morning when Kevin will be at work. The guy shows up right on time in a white van with his company logo on the side, and I meet him at the house with my key and the deed showing my name. He doesn't ask questions about why I'm changing the locks on my own house, just gets to work drilling out the old hardware and installing new deadbolts on both doors. The whole process takes about 40 minutes and costs me $200, but it's worth it to know Kevin can't just walk in whenever he wants. I take the new keys and slip one onto my keychain, feeling like I've taken back something that was always mine anyway. Walking through the house after the locksmith leaves feels weird in a way I wasn't expecting. Everything looks the same but different, like I'm seeing it all for the first time. The blue couch in the living room that Linda said was too modern. The kitchen curtains I picked because Kevin's mom mentioned she liked that pattern. The dining room table we bought because it matched the one at his parents' house. Every single choice I made was trying to earn approval from people who were literally keeping score of my failures. I stand in the middle of the living room and realize I don't even know what I actually like anymore because I spent 3 years decorating for someone else's rating system. I start in the bedroom, pulling clothes from the closet and folding them into boxes. My jewelry box goes into a bag along with the photos from my side of the family. I grab my laptop and charger, my important papers from the file cabinet, my grandmother's quilt from the hall closet. Kevin's stuff I don't touch at all because this isn't about being mean or getting revenge. It's about getting my things and getting out. His clothes stay in the closet, his toiletries stay in the bathroom, his books stay on the shelf. I'm not trying to hurt him by taking his stuff. I just need to protect myself and start building a life that's actually mine. It takes me about 2 hours to pack everything I really care about. I load the boxes into my car, making 3 trips back and forth. On my last walk through the house, I stop in the kitchen and look at the counter where I left my wedding ring. It's gone now because Kevin must have picked it up, probably thinking I just forgot it or something. I lock the door behind me with my new key and drive away, and I don't look back at the house in my rearview mirror. Kevin shows up at the house around 6 that evening, and I know because Lawrence calls me laughing about the voicemail he just received. Kevin tried his key in the lock and it didn't work. Then he tried the back door and that didn't work either, and apparently he completely lost it on the front porch. The voicemail Lawrence plays for me is Kevin yelling about how I can't lock him out of his own house, how this is illegal, how he's calling the police. Lawrence is still chuckling when he tells me Kevin clearly forgot that my name is the only one on the deed since I paid the entire down payment with money I saved before we even got married. The house is legally mine and I have every right to change the locks. The next morning, Lawrence files the formal separation agreement at the courthouse. The paperwork lists irreconcilable differences as the reason, but attached to it is a detailed account of Kevin's participation in 3 years of documented emotional abuse through the family group chat. Lawrence tells me the court clerk who processes the filing is a woman named Sandra, who apparently goes to the same church as Linda. Sandra's eyes got really wide when she read through the spreadsheet evidence, and Lawrence says he could practically see her mentally composing the phone calls she was going to make. By that afternoon, my phone has 3 messages from people I barely know, all asking if I'm okay, and saying they heard about what Linda did. Word is spreading through their social circle faster than I expected. My phone rings Tuesday afternoon from a restricted number, and I answer without thinking, which is a mistake. Linda's voice comes through crying and shaky, talking about how I've destroyed her family and turned everyone against her. She goes on about how people are calling her asking questions, how women from church are giving her cold looks, how I'm being cruel by sending that email to Phoebe when she only ever tried to help me be a better wife. Her voice gets higher and more desperate as she talks, and I can hear her completely rewriting history in real time. I let her talk for about 2 minutes before I interrupt, and ask if she actually believes what she's saying. There's a pause. Then Linda starts sputtering about how everything in the spreadsheet was constructive criticism meant to help me, how she was trying to guide me into being the wife Kevin needed. I realize as she talks that she's so deep in her own version of reality that she genuinely can't see the truth anymore. She's convinced herself that rating me weekly and sharing those ratings with the whole family was somehow an act of kindness, that documenting my failures was for my own good. I tell Linda very clearly that giving me a 4 out of 10 during my miscarriage wasn't constructive. It was cruel. I tell her that Kevin's thumbs up on that post showed me exactly what my marriage really was, and no amount of rewriting history is going to change that. She starts to argue, her voice getting defensive, but I hang up before she can finish her sentence. I don't owe her any more of my time or energy, and I'm done listening to her justify what she did. Wednesday morning, I wake up to a long email from Kalani that I wasn't expecting. She starts by saying she saw the spreadsheet as part of the legal documents Kevin showed the family, and seeing it all laid out like that made her realize how truly awful they all were. She writes that she's ashamed she participated in something so mean and hurtful, that she got caught up in Linda's way of doing things, and didn't stop to think about how it would feel from my side. The apology seems genuine, and she includes specific examples of times she said cruel things that she now regrets. Reading Kalani's email creates complicated feelings I'm not sure how to sort through. Part of me appreciates that she's taking responsibility and admitting she was wrong. But another part remembers that she was one of the people who said Kevin should have married Rachel instead of me, that she participated in rating me for 3 years without once speaking up. Her apology feels real, but it also feels like too little too late. I'm not ready to forgive anyone from that family yet, and I'm not sure I ever will be. The damage is done, and saying sorry doesn't undo 3 years of documented cruelty. I write back to Kalani that same afternoon, keeping my response short and clear. I thank her for the apology and for taking responsibility, but I explain that I need space from everyone connected to Kevin right now. What his family did hurt too much, and I'm not ready to have any of them in my life while I'm trying to heal and move forward. I hit send and feel okay about it, like I'm setting a boundary that actually protects me instead of trying to make everyone else comfortable. Kalani responds within an hour saying she understands completely and doesn't expect anything from me. She adds something that surprises me, that she's been working on setting her own boundaries with Linda and realizing how much her mother controlled and criticized her whole life too. She writes that maybe something good can come from this mess if it helps her break free from patterns she didn't even know were hurting her. Reading that makes me feel a tiny bit hopeful, like maybe the spreadsheet exploding into everyone's lives will force some people to look at how they've been treating each other. It doesn't fix what happened to me, but at least Kalani seems to be waking up to her own situation. The next morning, a delivery person shows up at my hotel room door with the biggest flower arrangement I've ever seen. Red roses mixed with white lilies in a huge crystal vase that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The card attached says he loves me and we can work through anything, signed with Kevin's name and about 15 heart emojis. I stare at the flowers sitting on the hotel desk and feel absolutely nothing except annoyance. This is exactly the kind of gesture Kevin thinks fixes problems, something expensive and showy that looks good, but doesn't actually address what went wrong. He sent me flowers instead of an actual apology for participating in 3 years of documented cruelty. He thinks roses and a generic card about working through things will make me forget that he gave a thumbs up when his mother rated me a 4 out of 10 during my miscarriage. I call the front desk and ask if they know any local nursing homes that might want a flower delivery. The clerk gives me the number for a place 2 blocks away, and I arrange for them to pick up the arrangement within the hour. I take a photo of the flowers before they leave, making sure to get the card in the shot. When Kevin texts me an hour later asking if I got his gift, I send him the photo I took at the nursing home showing 3 elderly residents sitting around the flowers with huge smiles on their faces. I add a message saying the flowers are beautiful, and I'm sure the people who are enjoying them really appreciate the gesture. Kevin's response comes back fast. just a question mark, which tells me this wasn't the reaction he expected. He probably thought expensive flowers would make me emotional and willing to talk, not that I'd give them away to strangers. My phone starts buzzing with messages from friends I haven't heard from in weeks. Apparently, Kevin has been reaching out to our mutual friends telling his version of events, which is that I left him without warning over a family disagreement, and he doesn't understand why I'm being so extreme. I read through the concerned messages asking if I'm okay, and if we can talk, and I realize Kevin is trying to control the story before I can tell people what actually happened. I spend the next hour forwarding the important parts of the spreadsheet to the friends who are asking questions. I don't send everything because some of it is too personal and painful, but I send enough that they can see what Linda was doing and how Kevin participated. The responses start coming back within minutes, and they range from complete shock to anger on my behalf. One friend writes back in all caps saying she can't believe Kevin's family did this, and she's so sorry she didn't see what was happening. My friend Jessica calls me directly instead of texting, and I can hear how upset she is before she even says hello. She admits she always thought Linda was cold to me, but assumed it was just normal mother-in-law stuff, the kind of tension that exists in lots of families. She says she noticed little things over the years, like how Linda would make small critical comments about my cooking or my clothes, but she figured that was just Linda's personality and I knew how to handle it. Jessica tells me she feels terrible for not saying something or asking if I was okay, and I can hear her voice getting shaky like she might cry. Another friend named Rachel, not Kevin's ex, but a different Rachel I met at work, sends a long message saying she noticed Kevin never stood up for me when his family made little digs. She writes that she saw it happen at parties and dinners, how someone would make a comment about my job or my appearance, and Kevin would just change the subject instead of defending me. Rachel says she didn't realize it was part of a bigger pattern of him letting his family treat me badly, and now that she sees the spreadsheet, she understands why I left. Having my friends validate that what happened wasn't normal helps more than I expected. I've spent 3 years wondering if I was too sensitive about Linda's comments, if I was trying too hard to win her approval, if I should have just brushed off the criticism like Kevin always told me to. Hearing my friends say this was genuinely awful and not something I should have had to endure makes me trust my own judgment again. I'm not crazy for being hurt by the spreadsheet. I'm not overreacting by leaving my marriage. What Kevin and his family did was cruel and wrong, and I was right to protect myself by getting out. 2 weeks pass with me staying at the hotel and avoiding everyone from Kevin's family. Lawrence calls me on a Tuesday afternoon saying Kevin's attorney contacted him with a settlement offer. Kevin will agree to a quick divorce and fair split of assets if I sign a non-disclosure agreement about the spreadsheet and family dynamics. Lawrence reads me the exact language from the proposal, which basically says I can never talk about what happened with anyone publicly or privately, and if I do, then I have to pay Kevin a huge amount of money in damages. Listening to the terms makes my stomach turn because it shows me exactly how desperate Kevin is to contain this situation. He doesn't want to fix what he did or apologize for participating in years of abuse. He wants to pay me to shut up and pretend it never happened, so his reputation stays clean. I meet with Lawrence the next day and he tells me the NDA request shows Kevin knows how bad this looks. Kevin understands that if people find out about the spreadsheet and his thumbs up during my miscarriage, he'll be seen as exactly what he is. Someone who let his family abuse his wife for years without defending her. Lawrence says Kevin wants to prevent me from talking about it publicly because he's worried about how it will affect his job and his social life and his future relationships. I tell Lawrence I refuse to sign any non-disclosure agreement because I'm not going to protect people who spent 3 years treating me like a project they could grade and criticize. If Kevin wants privacy, he should have thought about that before he participated in rating his wife like a product review. We spend the afternoon working on our counteroffer. I want to keep the house since I paid for the entire down payment with money I saved before we got married, and my name is the only one on the deed anyway. We propose a fair division of other assets like the savings account and the cars, but absolutely no non-disclosure agreement. Kevin can have his privacy if he agrees to my terms and stops contacting me directly, but I'm not signing anything that prevents me from telling the truth about what happened. Lawrence sends the counteroffer to Kevin's attorney before we leave his office, and he tells me to expect a response within a few days since Kevin seems motivated to settle this quickly. Kevin apparently doesn't take the counteroffer well because 3 days later I wake up to a text sent at 2 in the morning. He writes that I'm being vindictive and trying to punish him for his mother's behavior, that he never personally did anything to hurt me, and I'm destroying his life over things other people said. The text goes on for several paragraphs about how unfair I'm being and how I'm using the divorce to get revenge instead of trying to work things out like adults. I read through the whole message feeling completely calm, and then I screenshot it and send it to Lawrence as more evidence that Kevin still doesn't understand he participated in the abuse. Kevin thinks he's innocent because he didn't create the spreadsheet himself, but he was in that group chat for 3 years and never once defended me or told them to stop. His thumbs up on the post about my miscarriage wasn't his mother's behavior. It was his own choice, and no amount of late-night texts will change that fact. I forward Lawrence another screenshot of Kevin's text and add a note asking if this counts as harassment. He responds within 10 minutes saying it absolutely does, and we can use it if Kevin keeps pushing. The next few days pass quietly because I stop checking my phone obsessively and start focusing on what comes next instead of what just happened. Phoebe texts me on Thursday asking if I want to meet for lunch on Saturday, and something about the casual invitation makes me feel more normal than I have in weeks. I agree, and she sends me the address of a restaurant downtown that I've never been to before. Saturday afternoon, I walk into the restaurant and spot Phoebe immediately at a corner table near the windows. She waves me over and the hostess greets her by name, which tells me Phoebe comes here regularly. We hug briefly and sit down, and Phoebe orders a bottle of wine for the table without looking at the menu. The server brings it over with 2 glasses and disappears to give us time to decide on food. Phoebe pours for both of us and lifts her glass in a small toast to new beginnings, and I drink to that because it feels true. We order salads when the server comes back, and Phoebe asks how I'm holding up with everything. I tell her honestly that some days are harder than others, but I know I made the right choice leaving. She nods and says she's been thinking about Linda a lot since she got my email, remembering things she brushed off over the years that now seem more significant. Phoebe starts telling me stories about Linda going back to their college days. She says Linda always had to be the best at everything, and couldn't stand when other women got attention or praise. There was a girl in their dorm who got engaged junior year, and Linda spent months making little comments about how the ring was too small, and the guy probably couldn't afford better. Another friend got into medical school, and Linda suddenly decided she wanted to be a doctor too, even though she'd never mentioned it before, and dropped the idea when she didn't get accepted anywhere. Phoebe says Linda has spent her whole adult life competing with women instead of supporting them, always finding ways to tear others down so she could feel superior. She tells me about Linda's pattern of befriending women, and then slowly undermining them with criticism disguised as helpful advice. One friend gained weight after having a baby, and Linda kept buying her clothes in smaller sizes as motivation, which just made the woman feel terrible about herself. Another friend's husband left her, and Linda made comments about how she should have tried harder to keep him happy, like the divorce was somehow the friend's fault. Listening to these stories helps me understand that nothing I did would have made a difference with Linda. She didn't want a daughter-in-law who was good enough. She wanted control over Kevin and couldn't handle that he chose someone she didn't pick herself. Phoebe says Linda saw me as competition for Kevin's attention from the very beginning, and the spreadsheet was her way of keeping me feeling small and grateful for their acceptance. The ratings weren't about helping me improve. They were about making sure I never felt secure enough to challenge Linda's position as the most important woman in Kevin's life. Phoebe reaches across the table and squeezes my hand, telling me she's sorry she didn't see what was happening sooner and do something to stop it. I tell her it's not her fault, and I'm just glad to understand now that the problem was never me. We finish lunch, and Phoebe tells me she's done with Linda after seeing that spreadsheet. She says several other women in their social circle feel the same way, and Linda is finding herself suddenly uninvited to events and gatherings. I feel a small sense of justice hearing that Linda is facing real consequences for her cruelty, but mostly I just feel relieved to be away from all of it. Phoebe and I exchange numbers and promise to stay in touch and walking back to my car. I feel lighter than I have in days. 3 weeks pass with me living in the hotel and going through the motions of work and daily life. The hotel room is comfortable enough but expensive, and I realize I need to find my own place instead of staying in temporary housing. I start looking at apartments online during my lunch breaks and after work, scrolling through listings and trying to imagine myself in different spaces. Most of them feel generic and cold in the photos, just empty rooms that could belong to anyone. Then I find a listing for a 1-bedroom with big windows and hardwood floors that looks warm and bright even in the pictures. I call the number and the real estate agent answers, offering to show me the place that afternoon if I'm available. I meet the agent outside a building in a neighborhood I've always liked but never considered living in because Kevin thought it was too far from his parents. She unlocks the door and we walk up to the 2nd floor, and when she opens the apartment door, I feel something shift in my chest. Sunlight pours through the windows and makes patterns on the floor, and the whole space feels open and peaceful. The agent starts her standard speech about square footage and amenities, but I'm barely listening because I'm already imagining my furniture here, my books on those shelves, my life in this space. I walk through the bedroom and bathroom and small kitchen, and everything feels right in a way our house never did. This apartment is mine, not ours, not decorated to impress anyone, just a space where I can be myself without judgment or criticism. I tell the agent I want it, and she looks surprised that I'm deciding so fast. She starts to say something about thinking it over and comparing other options, but I cut her off and say, I've done enough thinking, and I know this is the right place. We go back to her office that afternoon, and I fill out the application and write a check for the deposit and first month's rent. The agent says she'll run my credit and employment verification, but expects everything to go through quickly since I have good income and references. I leave her office feeling more excited than I have in months, like I'm finally building something that belongs to me. The approval comes through 2 days later, and I sign the lease immediately. The agent gives me the keys, and I stand in my empty apartment holding them, feeling the weight of this decision and this new beginning. I call a moving company and schedule them to get my things from the house the following week. Lawrence sends Kevin's attorney official notice about when the movers will arrive, so Kevin can be elsewhere, because I don't want another scene on the front porch with him trying to convince me to stay. Kevin's attorney responds confirming Kevin will not be present during the move, which relieves me more than I expected. Moving day arrives and I meet the movers at the house with my key. Kevin isn't there like he promised, and I walk through our home one last time gathering everything that's mine. The movers pack up my clothes, my books, my kitchen items, the furniture I brought into the marriage. Kevin's stuff stays exactly where it is because this isn't about being mean, it's about taking what belongs to me and leaving the rest behind. Loading the truck takes 3 hours, and then I follow the movers to my new apartment and watch them unload everything into my space. Setting up my apartment takes the rest of the week and I do it slowly, making deliberate choices about where everything goes. I buy a couch I actually like instead of the neutral beige one Linda said was most appropriate for a married couple. I hang art that makes me happy instead of the landscape prints Kevin's mother gave us as a wedding gift. I arrange my kitchen exactly how I want it without worrying if the dishes are displayed correctly or the towels are folded the right way. Every choice I make is mine alone, and the apartment starts to feel like a reflection of who I actually am instead of who I was trying to be. I'm hanging curtains in the bedroom when someone knocks on my door. I'm not expecting anyone and my stomach drops because I have a bad feeling about who it might be. I look through the peephole and see Kevin standing in the hallway holding a poster board, and I cannot believe he tracked down my new address. He probably got it from the moving company, or maybe he followed the truck. But either way, he's here and he's holding what looks like a homemade sign with writing on it. I don't open the door, but I do call out asking what he wants. His voice comes through muffled, saying he needs to talk to me and he's not leaving until I hear him out. I unlock the door but keep the chain on so it only opens a few inches. Kevin holds up his poster board, and I see he's written a list of reasons why we should stay together, numbered 1 through 10. Like this is some romantic movie instead of the end of a marriage built on lies and cruelty. He starts reading them out loud, and his voice cracks on number 3, which is about how we promised forever, and he still believes in that promise. I let him finish his list because interrupting would just make this take longer, and when he's done, he looks at me with tears in his eyes, asking if we can please talk inside. I tell him through the door that I saw 3 years of messages in that group chat. 3 years of his family rating me and criticizing me and tearing me apart, and not once did he defend me or tell them to stop. His poster board doesn't change the fact that he gave a thumbs up emoji when his mother mocked me during my miscarriage for being too sad and neglecting his needs. No grand gesture or list of reasons can fix that level of betrayal, and I'm done trying to make him understand something he should have known all along. Kevin's face crumbles and he says he didn't think the spreadsheet was that big of a deal. It was just his mom being his mom, and he didn't want to cause family drama by making a fuss. I tell him that's exactly the problem. He chose avoiding drama with his family over protecting his wife, and he did it for 3 years without ever questioning if maybe his mom was wrong. I tell him we're done and he needs to leave, and I close the door while he's still trying to argue. He stands outside for another few minutes and I hear him crying. Then finally his footsteps fade away down the hall. When I look through the peephole again, he's gone, but he left the poster board leaning against my door like sad trash. I wait 5 minutes to make sure he's really left. Then I open the door and throw the poster board in the building's dumpster on my way back upstairs. 4 weeks after I left Kevin, we meet for divorce mediation at Lawrence's office. Kevin arrives with his attorney and I'm already sitting at the conference table when they walk in. Seeing Kevin across the table feels surreal because he looks so different from the man I married. He's lost weight and his clothes hang loose and there are dark circles under his eyes that make him look older and tired. Part of me feels bad for him, but a bigger part remembers that thumbs up emoji and feels nothing but sadness for all the time I wasted trying to be enough for people who were determined I never would be. Lawrence walks us through the settlement agreement and I watch Kevin's attorney lean over to whisper something in his ear. Kevin nods and his shoulders slump like he's finally accepting this is really happening. The agreement splits everything down the middle except for the house, which stays with me since I paid the down payment and most of the mortgage anyway. Kevin gets his car and all his personal stuff. I keep my retirement accounts and we divide the savings account evenly, even though I put in more over the years. His attorney slides the papers across the table and Kevin signs without arguing, which tells me he was told to take this deal and move on. The whole thing takes less than an hour and feels almost too easy after everything that happened. Like 3 years of marriage shouldn't dissolve this quickly, even when they were built on lies. We gather our things and Lawrence shakes my hand, telling me he'll file everything with the court today. Kevin stands by the door looking lost and small, waiting until Lawrence and his attorney leave the room before he turns to me. He asks if we can talk for just a minute and I almost say no, but something in his face makes me stop. I tell him he has 5 minutes and we sit back down at the conference table with 3 feet of polished wood between us. Kevin starts talking and his voice cracks on the first few words, saying he's sorry, and he didn't realize how much the spreadsheet would hurt me. He keeps going, and I notice his apology focuses more on getting caught than on the actual 3 years of cruelty. More about how bad he feels now than about the thumbs up emoji during my miscarriage. He says he thought it was just his mom being his mom, and he didn't want to cause family drama, and I realize he still doesn't actually understand what he did wrong. When he finishes, I take a breath and tell him I hope he figures out why his actions were so hurtful, but that's work he needs to do on his own without me. I tell him we're done and I'm moving forward with my life, and I genuinely wish him well, even though I never want to see him again. Kevin's eyes fill with tears, but I stand up and walk out before he can say anything else, because I've said everything I needed to say, and staying longer won't change anything. The divorce gets finalized 6 weeks after I left, which feels surprisingly fast, but makes sense since we had no kids and reached a settlement quickly. Lawrence calls me on a Thursday afternoon to tell me the judge signed the papers and it's officially over. I go to his office to pick up my copies, and signing my name on the final documents feels less sad than I expected, more like closing a chapter on a version of myself who didn't know her own worth. I drive home to my apartment and pour myself a glass of wine, sitting on my couch looking at the divorce decree with my name on it. 3 years of marriage reduced to legal paperwork that says we're strangers now, and the strangest part is how much lighter I feel. 2 days later, Kalani texts me asking if we can talk, saying Linda wants to reach out and see if we can meet to discuss everything. I stare at the message for a long time before I respond, telling Kalani I appreciate her trying to bridge things, but I have no interest in a relationship with Linda. I type carefully that I hope she understands some damage can't be repaired, and meeting wouldn't change the 3 years of documented cruelty, or make me feel any differently about what happened. Kalani responds right away saying she gets it and then adds something that surprises me. She says she's actually been in therapy dealing with her own issues with Linda's controlling behavior, working through years of feeling like nothing she did was ever good enough. We text back and forth for a while and I feel a weird connection to her, both of us trying to untangle ourselves from Linda's need to control and criticize. We agree to maybe get coffee sometime as individuals and not as family, which feels like the healthiest boundary I can offer right now. 2 months after leaving Kevin, I download a dating app and stare at my phone for 20 minutes before I actually create a profile. Dating feels completely different this time because I'm approaching it with clearer boundaries and a better understanding of what I actually need. I'm not trying to prove anything or win anyone over, just seeing if there's genuine compatibility and mutual respect with the people I meet. My first few dates are okay, but nothing special, and I don't feel desperate to make something work just because I'm newly single. I go out with a guy who talks about himself for 90 minutes straight, and I leave knowing I would have stayed in my marriage if I'd settled for that kind of treatment again. I meet someone else who seems nice but lives with his parents at 35 and has no plans to move out, and I politely decline a second date without feeling guilty about my standards. My friends throw me a divorce party on a Saturday night that's really just an excuse to celebrate me choosing myself over a toxic situation. We drink wine in my apartment and someone brings a cake decorated with the words, "Free at last," in purple frosting. We laugh about Kevin's poster board gesture and how he thought numbered reasons would fix 3 years of documented cruelty, and I feel surrounded by people who actually value me for who I am. One friend makes a toast to new beginnings and everyone raises their glasses, and I realize these women have been supporting me all along even when I couldn't see how bad things were. We stay up late sharing stories about bad relationships we've left and lessons we've learned, and I go to bed feeling grateful for the people who stayed when things got hard. 3 months after the divorce, I list the house for sale because keeping it feels like holding on to too many memories of trying to be someone I'm not. The real estate agent says the market is good, and we should get multiple offers, and she's right because we have 3 bids within a week. I accept the highest one and sign the papers without any sadness, just relief that I can finally move on completely. The profit from the sale gives me a solid financial foundation I didn't have before, and I start looking for a smaller place that's entirely mine with no ghosts of failed approval seeking. I find a townhouse with big windows and a small yard, and I put down a deposit the same day I see it. Moving happens quickly, and I hire movers to pack up everything, watching them load boxes into the truck while I stand in the empty living room one last time. The house looks bigger without furniture, and I remember all the hours I spent arranging things to impress Linda, choosing neutral colors and safe decorations that would earn her approval. I lock the door behind me and hand the keys to my real estate agent, and I don't look back as I drive away. Work gets easier as I stop carrying the stress of my failing marriage into the office every day. I notice I'm more focused in meetings and more confident presenting ideas, like I'm finally operating at full capacity instead of running on half power. My boss comments that I seem different lately in a good way, more assertive and engaged with projects. She assigns me to lead a major account that I've wanted for months, and I accept knowing I earned it through my actual work, instead of trying to prove myself to people who would never value me. The project kicks off and I throw myself into it, staying late some nights because I want to not, because I'm avoiding going home. My team responds well to my leadership, and we hit our first deadline ahead of schedule, and I feel like I'm thriving without the constant criticism and judgment that used to follow me everywhere. Phoebe calls me the next week and invites me to her book club meeting on Thursday night, and I say yes, even though I haven't been to a book club since college. The meeting is at someone's house with big windows and comfortable furniture, and when I walk in, everyone smiles at me like they're actually happy I'm there. We talk about the book for maybe 20 minutes before the conversation shifts to life and work and families, and nobody asks invasive questions or makes subtle digs about my choices. One woman talks about her recent divorce and another shares about setting boundaries with her parents, and I realize these are people who support each other instead of tearing each other down. Phoebe introduces me as her friend, not as Kevin's ex-wife or Linda's former daughter-in-law, and that simple introduction makes me feel like a real person instead of someone's disappointing project. After the meeting ends, 3 women give me their phone numbers and say we should get coffee sometime, and they seem to mean it in a genuine way that doesn't feel obligatory. I drive home feeling lighter than I have in years, like I've found what normal, healthy friendships actually look like after spending so long in Linda's toxic circle. 3 months pass, and I'm at the grocery store on a Saturday morning when I spot Cecilia in the produce section. She sees me and immediately pretends to be very interested in the apples, turning her back like she can suddenly become invisible. I grab my cart and walk right up to her aisle, saying hello in a cheerful voice that makes her freeze. She turns around with this fake smile and mumbles something about how nice it is to see me, but her face is bright red and she won't make eye contact. I ask how she's been and she stammers through some generic response about being busy, and I can see her hands shaking as she puts apples in her bag. The whole interaction lasts maybe 2 minutes before she makes an excuse about forgetting something in another aisle and practically runs away, leaving her cart behind. Watching her squirm with embarrassment over what she did gives me a sense of closure I didn't know I needed, like seeing proof that actions have consequences, and people who participate in cruelty don't get to pretend it never happened. I finish my shopping feeling satisfied that I handled it with more grace than she deserved, just by being polite and refusing to let her hide from what she did. A week later, I get a text from Miranda asking if we can talk, and I almost delete it before curiosity wins. She sends me a long message apologizing for the comments she made about my weight in the group chat, explaining that her teenage daughter has been asking questions about body image lately. Miranda writes that hearing her daughter worry about being judged made her realize the harm of the casual cruelty she participated in, and she's ashamed of how she treated me. Her apology seems genuine, but also clearly prompted by her own situation hitting close to home, like she needed something personal to make her understand that words actually hurt people. She doesn't make excuses or try to minimize what she did, just says she was wrong and she's sorry, and she hopes I can forgive her someday. I read the message 3 times trying to figure out how I feel, and I land on something between appreciation for the apology and sadness that it took her daughter's pain to make her see mine. I sit with the message for a day before responding because I want to make sure I say what I actually mean instead of what sounds nice. I text Miranda back thanking her for the apology and saying I appreciate her honesty about what prompted it. I tell her I accept her apology, but I'm not interested in maintaining any connections with Kevin's family because I need to move forward without those relationships. She responds quickly saying she understands and she's grateful for my grace, and I believe she means it even though part of me thinks grace is more than she showed me. I don't feel angry anymore, just tired of carrying around the weight of other people's cruelty, and accepting her apology without offering reconciliation feels like the right balance. I block her number after our exchange because I don't want to leave the door open for future contact, and I move on, knowing I handled it with more maturity than anyone in that family showed me during 3 years of marriage. My life settles into a rhythm that feels comfortable instead of stressful, with work projects I enjoy and friends who actually want to spend time with me. I start taking a pottery class on Wednesday nights just because it sounds fun, and I'm terrible at making bowls, but nobody's grading my work or telling me I should try harder. The instructor is patient and encouraging, and the other students laugh when their clay collapses on the wheel, instead of treating mistakes like personal failures. I make a lopsided mug that holds coffee even though it looks ridiculous, and I use it every morning because it represents doing something purely for enjoyment without anyone's approval. My weekends fill up with brunches and movie nights and hiking trips with friends from work, and Phoebe's book club, and I realize I'm building a social life based on mutual respect instead of family obligation. I go on a few dates with people from apps, and some are good and some are boring, but I don't feel desperate to make something work just because I'm newly single. One guy talks about himself for 90 minutes, and I leave knowing I would never settle for that kind of one-sided attention again, and another seems nice but still lives with his parents at 35 with no plans to change. I'm picky about who I spend my time with now because I learned what happens when you ignore red flags to avoid being alone. 6 months after I discovered the spreadsheet, I wake up on a Saturday morning and realize I'm genuinely happy in a way I never was during my marriage. I have friends who celebrate my successes instead of finding ways to diminish them, and my boss just promoted me to senior account manager because my work has been consistently excellent. My apartment feels like home instead of a stage where I'm performing for an invisible audience, decorated with things I actually like instead of neutral choices meant to avoid criticism. I spend my evenings reading or cooking or talking with friends instead of anxiously waiting for Kevin to come home and tell me what his mother said about me that day. My bank account is healthier because I'm not spending money on gifts and gestures meant to win approval from people who were never going to give it. I look at myself in the mirror and see someone who looks rested and content, instead of the exhausted woman who was trying so hard to be enough for a family that had decided she never would be. The spreadsheet that destroyed my marriage also freed me from a life where my worth was measured in weekly scores and critical comments, and I'm grateful I found it before I wasted more years trying to earn love that was never available. I meet someone new at a friend's birthday party in July, and he makes me laugh within the first 5 minutes of conversation. His name is Joshua, and he works in environmental consulting, and he asks me questions about my life like he's genuinely interested in the answers. We talk for an hour about everything from favorite books to worst vacation disasters, and he doesn't interrupt me or turn every topic back to himself. He asks if he can take me to dinner the following week, and I say yes, feeling cautiously optimistic but not desperate for it to work out. Our first date stretches into 3 hours at an Italian restaurant where we share pasta and talk about our families without me feeling judged for my divorce. Joshua tells me about his own failed engagement 2 years ago and how he learned to recognize when someone's words don't match their actions, and I feel seen in a way I never did with Kevin. We start seeing each other regularly, and he treats me with consistent kindness and respect, showing up when he says he will, and meaning the things he promises. It's early, and I'm taking it slow because I know what happens when you rush into things without really knowing someone. But the difference between this and my marriage is so stark, it's almost funny. Joshua asks about my day, and actually listens to the answer, and he never makes me feel like I need to shrink myself or hide parts of who I am to make him comfortable. Looking back now, that spreadsheet was the worst and best thing that could have happened to me because it showed me the truth I'd been avoiding for 3 years. I was married to someone who watched his family tear me apart and never said a word to stop them, who gave a thumbs up when his mother mocked my grief over losing a baby. I spent so much energy trying to be the wife Linda wanted instead of being myself, changing everything from my clothes to my hobbies to my personality to earn approval that was never coming. Finding that spreadsheet hurt worse than anything I've experienced, but it also freed me from a life where my worth was determined by someone else's rating system. I'm building a life now where I'm valued for who I actually am instead of scored on who someone else wanted me to be, surrounded by people who celebrate me instead of criticizing me. My career is better because I'm not carrying the weight of a failing marriage into every meeting, and my friendships are deeper because I have the energy to invest in people who actually care about me. I wake up every morning in my own apartment without dreading the day ahead, and I go to bed at night without replaying every interaction to figure out what I did wrong. I've never felt more free or more myself than I do now, 6 months after I left my wedding ring on the counter and walked away from people who spent 3 years proving they would never see my worth.